Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Horror Room. I'm Travis Bruce, and today we're doing another indie horror spotlight. I have with us today a director. He has his third short out right now. It's on the festival circuit, released sometime next year, and I've had the pleasure to see the screener of it, and it's absolutely amazing. I have Nathaniel Monar with us today, and he has his new short is called. You can see it in the background. It's called "What Hides Within." Nathaniel, thank you for coming on, my friend.
Thanks for having me. This is great.
So tell my audience, I've already seen it, but tell my audience a little bit about What Hides Within.
So as you said, it is our third short that we've done. It's actually the first short through my new production company that I launched called Accent A Productions. And I've had the pleasure of working with a lot of fantastic people, a lot of the same people I've worked on the other two shorts with. On this film. And What Hides Within, it's a suspense thriller short film about this couple that's traveling for the holidays, and a blizzard strikes while they're on the road, and they have to pull off at their family lake house to avoid the storm, but they don't know that somebody else is in the house with them. And it's really cool. We got a lot of cool things going for it, a lot of great work from a lot of people on it.
And one thing I can say that had me fucking on my toes the whole time was the score. The sound effects and the score, just the creaking and the it just built the tension the whole entire time.
Yeah, I am so happy with the score. So that the score is done by Johnny Gifford, who's done the score. He did the score for my last film too, Sleep No More, which equally incredible job. He's just such a gifted musician. And he really kind of just looks at it and brings like such an interesting perspective to the scenes, and really just composes in such a unique way, like so different from how traditional movie scores are done, because he's not approaching it as a film composer. He's doing it as someone who just loves using guitar pedals and making weird noises, but he also has that approach of really understanding narrative and characters and what the scene needs and what it requires. And so he just does such a fantastic job.
Excellent job. I mean, as soon as they walk in, from first step they walk into that cabin, that score that's going off, it just builds attention. And it's like the hairs are standing on your neck like, what the fuck is in this house?
Well, good. I'm glad it did its job.
So how long did it take you production-wise for the short? So
kind of long in ways that we weren't expecting, and short in ways that we weren't expecting. So the sort of inception of the story was that in July of 2021, I went to my friend's lake house that he has. It's the exact house in the film up in Chicora, New Hampshire. We were there hanging out for 4th of July weekend, and I'm looking around this place and I'm thinking, this is such like a cool environment. You see in the film all the eccentric designs. We didn't add anything to the house. There's actually only one prop that we added to the house. All those roosters and snowmen and everything that's in the house, that's all actually there. And so I'm looking around at this place. I'm like, this is such a cool environment. And, as a filmmaker, I'm always looking around at places thinking, oh, this would be a cool thing to film, or, oh, I wish I could film here. Or if I lined this up like this, it would be such a cool way to shoot this. And so I'm looking at this house thinking this would be such a great environment to shoot in. But, it's never going to happen. We're not going to actually shoot here. And then I'm like thinking more about it. I'm like, well, maybe, what if we did film here? And I was like, well, maybe I should ask. They're not going to say yes, but let me ask my friend, what would his family think of us filming there? And I asked them, and they were on board. And so it really kind of started with the location. And then from there, I kind of fleshed out the story that really revolved around this house. So the beginnings of the ideas started in July of 2021. We were in full-blown pre-production by August, and we filmed it in January of 2022. And then we hit post-production, which took a very long time, a lot longer than we were really expecting to be in post-production on it. And so from filming in January of 2022, we hit picture lock, and we finished the film in time for its premiere in July of 2023.
Wow. So I hope I'm not giving anything away, but so 50%
No.
is of this film is in the dark in this house.
Mm.
There's very limited lighting. How were you able to navigate around that? And was it tough to shoot a movie, 50% in the dark?
It was very tough. It was one of the ideas I had really early on from a production standpoint was that I really wanted to practically shoot this with just cell phone lights. We didn't have any additional lights. We just had the cell phones because I really wanted to have this stark contrast of absolute darkness and then bright light shining through. And so I did a couple of tests just on my camera that I have. I tested it in my basement and sent the test footage to our cinematographer and to my producer and just kind of giving them a vision of what I was looking for. And there was doubts among us as to whether or not we'd be able to pull it off. We were like thinking that we might have to set up a light to be the moonlight, to have a little bit of light. And we even on the day started setting up lights to set that up because that was going to be planned. We didn't have the confidence that we were going to be able to pull it off with literal just cell phone light. But when we couldn't get that lighting to look right, I was like, let's just try it this way and see if it actually works. And so we did the test and it looked perfect. And so a lot of it just came down to picking the right camera to have that level of, to be able to pick up everything in very, very, very low light. And so with the right camera and lenses, as well as being able to stage everything and block it all properly, we were able to pull it off. And even we only have one shot where we have a proper lighting setup. Everything else is either cell phone light or even some of the specialized lighting, like not to give anything away, but there's a scene involving red and blue lights.
Yes.
That was done with just a laptop.
Really?
Even the fireplace light, we just had a laptop, or we had a couple laptops and a TV in front of our actors to give them that flickering glow. So we really only used very, very low budget style lighting for that.
But that's incredible. And one of the things that we're talking about too, I want to tell you about the camera work was amazing too for a horror film because you only allowed the audience to see so much. And it as someone's watching, you're like, well, something's over there, but how come the camera's not cutting over there at that time? Was that something that you meant to do?
Yeah, I really wanted to, keep the audience guessing as to what was actually going on because, you set it up as something is there. And even it's not even super clear to the audience. I mean, you give the description of what the film is like and you understand someone's in the house, but you don't necessarily get that off the bat. You get something's happening, something's not exactly right, but it's not completely clear to the audience, what that is. You get the score working with that and the sound effects.
Mm-hmm.
And I really wanted to have these like really fluid camera motions through the house. So our DP Jack McMullen, he has a gimbal set up for his camera, and so we're able to get these really nice kind of gliding, smooth motions through the house to really give you that sense of the environment, but then also to pick and choose, like making you kind of not sure about this corner of the house. You think something might be there, you're not exactly sure, but just to give that sort of illusion to the audience.
Yeah, because you think there's something in the corner, and then the camera turns, and like, oh, why did it turn? There's something clearly in that fucking corner.
Yeah, so I really wanted to keep the audience guessing as to where everything was, that disorienting effect, because for the characters, I mean, Hannah, played brilliantly by Rachel Miles. It's her family's lake house, so she knows the environment, but our other character, Naomi, also played brilliantly by Maddie Falcone. She's never been there before, and so there's that disorienting effect for her character as to she doesn't know the environment, she doesn't know where anything is, and it's completely pitch black, and so you're kind of creating that sort of disorientation that character has in the audience by not exactly showing them exactly where everything is.
And for the audience, the reason is pitch black because the power is out. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. In this movie too, with the two main characters, you actually do an interesting subject. It's a lesbian couple, and the one is she's bringing her new girlfriend to meet her parents. So there's some tension, anxiety there about how that is going to go. Now, when you were thinking of the characters, did you think, you know what, let me go with a lesbian couple and build that tension of meeting the family for the first time?
Yeah, it just kind of, that's sort of how I kind of just approached it from the very beginning. It wasn't very much a conscious choice as much as it just felt like that made sense for these characters. And I generally, most of the characters that I write are women. And so it just sort of made sense for what the story was that it was going to be this couple dynamic. And one of those things that, evolved as the script evolved as I was writing it was really trying to bring in that sort of, Naomi's anxiety about meeting the mom, and then alluding to that she might have had other circumstances where it didn't necessarily go the way she wanted to, and really kind of building up that relationship. And then, to avoid going into spoilers, you see kind of what happens with that ultimately.
And there's a lot of hints tossed at you from beginning to end that makes sense at the end. So you can tell that the character is holding something. There's a secret, and it just starts making sense towards the end, which is, you did a great job with.
Oh, well, thank you. I really appreciate that.
Because some directors do that, and they give away the end way too soon, and the audience can predict the ending, but you just gave enough bits and pieces so that the audience, me, was guessing to the end and then I was like, oh, okay, that makes a little more sense now.
Yeah, because I tried to set it up. I almost thought of it as like wanting to play on the tropes that you expect, because I really don't think of this as a horror movie. I think there's a lot of horror elements in it. To me, it's much more of a suspense thriller, but I really wanted to play on the expectations of the audience expecting this horror movie. And so, when you get that setup of two girls enter a house, someone's in the house, what's going to happen, you have a very kind of clear idea of how that's going to play out, or at least how you think it should play out. And then it very much does not do that, and it completely flips on its head. And I think that kind of helped, that expectation that we set up with the audience allowed us to really play with that and get to something that's a lot deeper and more dynamic and more thematically rich, and really also helped with that, where you don't see it coming, but it all makes sense after the fact, because we're leading you towards one way and then it goes in a completely other direction.
And I'm gonna say something too. This movie definitely has a cold ending. When I say a cold ending, it's not a happy ending.
Literally cold. Literally cold too.
It's a cold. It's a cold ending, and it definitely, this doesn't end happily ever after. Maybe, I don't know. It left open as well where what's gonna happen next.
Yeah, it's funny now because, since we made the film, I've gone on to write a feature version of the script. And so in my head, I know what happens after the end, because that leads us very much into what the rest of the feature film is. But that was one of the exciting things about when we were developing the short film, is that we liked having that sort of open ending to it, and really ending on a very horrific note, and horrific for the characters specifically.
Mm-hmm. So who did you get some of your inspiration from? Were there any directors or filmmakers that you were making this, or that you, before younger, that you liked their work? And I want to kind of,
I draw a lot of inspiration in my work from John Carpenter. I'm very much Halloween, The Thing. Those are two. The Thing, especially for this, that sort of being in a closed environment. I love closed environment films where it's just limited characters and a limited amount of space, and something's trying to get in, or they're stuck with something in with them. And The Thing definitely was a huge inspiration for this, because that's very much at play in that film. And so I was thinking about that film a lot as I was writing the script, and then while we were in pre-production, I went back and rewatched the film a few times just to kind of, look at the camera movement and look at how they played on having so many for them, so many different characters in one environment, and for us it was just two, and then kind of playing with that sort of how to navigate those characters through that environment and keep it interesting and not monotonous. And so, yeah, The Thing was probably the biggest inspiration for me while I was developing the film. And then just John Carpenter in general has always been a huge inspiration for me and how I approach things. And yeah.
I mean, it is a claustrophobic feeling in this movie because there is a snowstorm. They're trapped in this cabin. There's nowhere to go. And it's the unknown. Mm-hmm. So it definitely, and it's that primal fear that we have to be trapped with the unknown. And I definitely see a lot of The Thing in this.
Yeah, so I'm glad that showed through, because there was a lot of loving homage to The Thing and to other films throughout the process, and that's one of the great things. I'm sorry.
I would say Halloween 78 too. There's a lot of, with the score, there's a lot of that in it as well. I mean, this is not, by the way, this is not a super, I don't know if I can say it. It's not a gory movie or anything, but it's like a Halloween 1978. It's that psychological fear.
Yeah, and I really gravitate towards for score, like as you were mentioning, very much I gravitate towards that kind of style, and I think Johnny, as he was composing our score, he knows that, and so he does bring a lot of that to it, and there's a lot of conversations about having the noises you hear with the score emulating the wind and that sort of, that kind of dynamic, and having that up against the real sounds of the wind and the shaking of the house and that sort of trembling feeling to make it feel like the house isn't exactly stable and you're not exactly sure, is the house even going to blow over or something like that. Yeah. So yeah, he really did a phenomenal job bringing this film to life with his really haunting score.
Now, this movie is 26 minutes, I believe. I remember watching it. It was 26
minutes.
Yes. Was it tough to try to cram a whole story into 26 minutes? Was there a challenge to that?
Yes and no. I with shorts, it's funny. When I write features, I tend to go shorter, and with shorts, I tend to write longer. So I think the script, or at least I can't remember if it was the final shooting script, but I know the script at one point was like well over 30 pages, probably even closer to 35. And then as we were trying to pare it down and cut out some of the fat of it, and I think the final shooting script did end up being somewhere around 30 pages. And it is tough because you want to, you especially with this story, there's so much to do. You have to introduce these characters, and especially when you have so many twists and turns with the story itself and with the characters, you want to make sure that there's breathing room, and while also being able to build the atmosphere, build the tension, have those lengthy camera motions. And so it is tough to kind of get that all into a package. I do think kind of, seeing the final product, I do think I could have made it shorter. There are parts of it that probably could have been trimmed down. But it is tough to kind of get that all into that package. But I think then it becomes, every minute is precious in a film like that. You only have 26 of them. So you got to make sure that every single one of them counts. And so it just goes to looking at the dialogue. Okay, is this dialogue communicating anything? No, this line's got to go then. Yes. Or how can you best utilize this one line that you have? How best can you utilize it to tell you everything you need to know about these characters? Because you only have so few precious lines that you do have.
Correct. Now, I don't know how you would have pulled it off making it shorter, because I think 26 minutes was the perfect amount of time because I mean, there's some backstories in there. I mean, you were able to cram a lot into 26 minutes. So if you would have took it off, I think it would have been missing, and it would have been a little off.
Yeah.
But I think you hit it right on the nail with the 26 minutes. You wrapped up, I don't know how, but you were able to wrap up 2 backstories with a news story, with several news stories in that short amount of time.
Yeah, well, I'm glad. I'm glad that worked, because it was funny. After we held the premiere, I was talking to people afterwards, and some people felt like it flew by. Like when I told them it was 26 minutes, they're like, "That was 26 minutes? That felt like that was 15." And I talked to other people, and they're like, not in a bad way, but they're like, "Really? That was 26? That felt more like a 40-minute film." And so it's kind of funny how for some people, sometimes the tension and everything, it just makes it fly by. And for some people, it just slowly settles in for them. And so it's always interesting to me to get feedback on the timing of the film, because I've just had so many different people telling me like so many different things about whether it flew by, whether it took its time, whether for you it was just right. And so I'm glad it can have that effect.
If it was shorter or longer, then it could have been longer if you were going to add on to the ending. You know what I mean? If we were to follow through with the ending. But besides that, I mean, it was perfect. The 26 mark was perfect. I was engaged the whole entire time, and I didn't feel like I missed anything or something didn't make sense. So
good. I'm glad I had that effect.
No problem. Now, is it tough being a filmmaker, indie filmmaker, in the year 2023?
It very much is, especially when you're relying on. Luckily for me, in terms of people working with you, I have a fantastic group of people. Lots of people that I went to college with. I went to Fitchburg State, graduated in 2020, and so all people that years later I'm still making films with. We're in pre-production on another film right now, and it's a lot of the same people that worked on this one working on that one. And so I have a great sort of network of people who I've worked with multiple times, and I'm close with personally and friends with, while also being very close with in more of a professional status as well. And so in terms of people, it's, you're nice. It's good to be able to fall back on that and rely on those people. With everything else, it's very hard, especially money-wise. Especially money-wise. Because for a lot of these films, you can't make it without crowdfunding. And crowdfunding is always a hard thing, because, I never want to be the person who's, posting on social media, "Hey, give me money." But you kind of have to be like, that's the way you have to do it. And it's tough, because whatever you don't raise comes out of your own pocket. And so, it is tough in that sense, but it's one of those things that if you have the right support, and everyone understands it's a lower budget film anyways, and so you just kind of have to figure out solutions, and maybe you don't get to do everything you wanted to do, but you figure out creative solutions to solve those problems, to keep it low budget, and you just work through it.
Okay. By the way, I got one last question for the movie. I don't know if you can answer this or not. If not, you can answer it off camera. So the thing that's in the house, I'm trying to think the best way to word it.
Yeah.
Were you purposely vague about the story behind it? Or
yes.
Was that something time restraints was?
No, I think that was purposefully done. There wasn't anything more to that we cut out to get it to. Okay. Everything that we had regarding that dynamic, was in the script and how we shot it. And now I'm trying to think of how best to word it without spoiling anything. But I'd say we purposely wanted to keep that vague, because I felt like what is said in the movie is all you really needed to know about that, and alluding to something deeper and something more with a few choice words in the dialogue did enough, in my eyes, to communicate the point of it without bogging down the story and adding even more time to the runtime, as you're saying, make it even longer by doing all this extra stuff. Whereas I felt like we could just allude to it and just enough that the audience gets the point and we can move on.
And use their imagination, which I did.
Yeah. But in my head, I have the whole story. So,
yeah,
but that's kind of what you got to do as the writer.
Yeah. So, will there be a sequel, or would there be a full version of What Hides Within that you will release eventually?
Ideally. So the hope is, I kind of treat this as like it's a short film, but to me, it's a proof of concept of me as a writer, me as a director, me working with my team. As I said, I do have a full feature version of the script written. And so the hope ideally would be, through the festival circuit, we get in front of eyeballs and you network and you meet people at these festivals. And ultimately, hopefully, maybe you meet the right person and say the right thing, and that can lead to a feature version of the film. Or, maybe that comes years later. And then you have this proof of concept to show, here's the feature version of the script, and here's the 26-minute version of what this film can be. So that's the hope, at least, of what this could ultimately lead to. And as I said, we are in pre-production on a new short film, and so maybe that's the one that kicks things off, or maybe it's the next one or the one after that. Who knows? But that's at least the goal and the hope with this film.
Now, can you talk about your next short?
Yeah. So it's called, so I can't give too many details, but it's called Alone in Here. And we're shooting in April of 2024. It's kind of a complicated shoot. To keep it vague, there's multiple different stages of filming that are required. And so part of the filming begins in November, December of this year, with the rest of the principal photography in April.
Okay. Now, and you're doing crowdfunding for that as well?
Yeah. We'll hopefully be launching that in like January or February, as we're a little closer to shooting. And once we have a lot more of the pre-production work behind us. But yeah, this one's going to be, this one's definitely much like very Carpenter inspired, very Halloween specific inspired. If my last film was The Thing, this is Halloween. So it's
that's my favorite. That's my favorite horror film. So
yeah. Oh, I mean, for me personally, and I'm sporting the shirt, The Exorcist is my all-time favorite horror. But if you're talking about the trinity of horror, it's got to be Exorcist, The Thing, and Halloween. That's the trinity right there.
Mm-hmm. All right. Off the top topic question. Have you seen the new Exorcist? And what did you think of it? I
did. Okay, I didn't hate it like I thought I was gonna hate it because so a little bit of context. The first Halloween sequel that came out in 2018 that David Gordon Green did, loved it. I thought that movie was excellent. I thought, not a perfect movie, but a perfect sequel. Like that's the template for how you do a legacy sequel. Yes. Thought it was excellent. And then I did not like Halloween Kills, and I didn't even see Halloween Ends.
Horrible.
So yeah, which is why I heard it. So I'm like, why would I go see it then? So I was kind of I love the idea of them going back to Exorcist, but I was very sour on the idea of David Gordon Green doing it. And not that he's a bad filmmaker or anything, but I just felt like I wanted to see someone else kind of tackle that. And so for Exorcist Believer, I thought that the first act was really good. I really liked the setup, the new characters that they had, the new family, the things that they set up in the beginning, I thought was really good. And I was really on board, surprisingly so. And then the second that it became an Exorcist movie is when I tapped out. I felt so forced, and I would have much preferred a new possession story with these characters that was not related to Exorcist. But of course, I understand why they made it an Exorcist movie. So
yeah, because $400 million. But
exactly.
But I'm not the biggest Exorcist fan, but I respect Exorcist for what it is, right? I've taken the Exorcist tour. I went to the house, the stairs, got a picture.
Oh wow!
if you go on my Facebook, my main profile picture is me sitting on the stairs, the Exorcist stairs.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. So I respect Exorcist for it's the first one. It was amazing. I don't think that we needed another Exorcist movie. There's been so many movies that have came out since the original Exorcist and the sequels that have done a better job of being an Exorcist movie than Exorcist Believer. Does that make sense?
No, I understand exactly what you're saying.
There's so many. I mean, there's a list that are so much better at being an Exorcist movie than an actual Exorcist movie is. And and like you said, with David Gordon Green, I'm a huge Halloween fan. Halloween 2018, I loved it. Halloween Kills, I saw it in the theaters, and I loved it till I watched it at home because it was on HBO Max or something for free, and I was like, well, why did I like this movie? I was like, and like the third time watching, I was like, oh, this movie is really bad. And then Halloween Ends killed it for me, and I don't want to see another Halloween movie. What he did to the Halloween series, I don't even want to see another Halloween movie anytime in the near future. I really do. And I was afraid that he was going to do this to The Exorcist, especially them saying that it's going to be a trilogy. Instead of saying...
That was my biggest problem with it.
Yes, because he likes to stretch the story out, and it just feels like an incomplete movie.
Yeah.
To me.
And I think that's part of what the first, like the 2018 Halloween, was that they weren't making it thinking about the other two sequels.
It's going to be a one-off.
Exactly. They made their movie, and they left it open for another one if it made money, which it did. But they just made their movie, and that was missing from. And then once they were like, we're gonna do two more, and they did Halloween Kills and Ends. I was sitting there watching Halloween Kills, feeling like this feels incomplete because it felt like they were only telling half of a story because they were waiting to tell the other half in the next year. And so as soon as they said Exorcist they're starting out with a trilogy, that's just not a good way to do it. That just doesn't make sense. Make your first movie, and if you want to make more, then make more, but focus on one really good movie and make the best movie you can make without the expectation that you're going to be able to make any more. But yeah, I think the biggest reason that for me Halloween 2018 worked and this new Exorcist didn't. It's not the only reason, but one of the biggest reasons I think is that Halloween 2018, while you have new characters involved, Laurie Strode is still the main character. It's still her story, and it's continuing her story and building upon it. Chris McNeil doesn't get introduced in Exorcist Believer until at least halfway through the movie. And then I don't want to give any spoilers for people.
But you can miss it. But you can miss it. You can miss her in the movie.
Exactly. They use her so pointlessly. And you know what? I get it. Maybe you don't want to make the focus of your new trilogy a 90-year-old woman. I understand that. But then I feel like, maybe go with Reagan then and tell Reagan's story. Or, like if you're going to do an Exorcist sequel, continue the story of The Exorcist. And even though I thought the best part of the movie was the new characters that they introduced and set up in that new family, it just felt like, oh, we're just going to redo the first Exorcist movie and we're going to continue it, which is what Halloween did.
To me, it seemed like a person who'd never seen Exorcist. I don't want to say that, but it literally seemed like a person who'd never seen Exorcist. Someone told them the premise of The Exorcist and say make a movie.
Oh. Yeah, and it felt like David Gordon Green loved Halloween and then got to make a Halloween. Yeah. And in this one, he was like, oh yeah, Exorcist? Sure, yeah, I'll do that too, and signed on for it. Like, it didn't feel like it came from that place of love.
It was a cash grab, yes.
Yeah.
But
so we'll see. I'm sure it'll make more of them because they spent as you said, $400 million. They spent way too much money to not make more. But I hope they seriously change the way that they approach this if they're gonna do more, because this was just ended up being whatever. And it could have been a lot more than that.
And I think going in, my opinion would have been completely different if I didn't know it was going to be a part of a trilogy. If I
Yeah.
walked in thinking that it's going to be a one-all thing, I think my experience or the way my brain was thinking would have been completely different. I walked in knowing that this is not going to be a end, or you know what I mean, or this is going to go somewhere.
Yeah.
This is going to cut off to be continued or something. And I don't like that. I don't want to
Yeah.
know that it's going to be to be continued.
Yeah. Or at least if that's your approach, then structure your movie so that it has that. I mean, the film does have an end, but then it
Yes.
very clearly is like holding up a big flag saying, "Come
Yes.
back for the second one." And and that's the problem, is that you can't do it that way.
Yeah. All right, Nathaniel, where can everyone find you, my friend?
So you can find me on social media at Nathaniel Molnar. I have my website, nathanielmolnar.com, where I have all my information for all of my previous films that I've done, where you can watch my last two shorts, It Had to Be Today and Sleep No More, and as well as all the information on What Hides Within and our next film, Alone in Here. You can find me on Vimeo to check out my work and whatnot. And for our film specifically, you can follow us on Instagram at WHW2023Film. That's where we have all the information for everything going on with festivals. And there's some cool videos we did about our premiere back in June rather. And we'll also be later this year, before the end of the year, we'll be dropping a feature-length making-of documentary for What Hides Within, featuring interviews with me, our producer, the actors, with all sorts of behind-the-scenes pictures and video going in depth on the process of the making of the film.
Nice. Nathaniel, your next movie, when you can talk more about it and you're ready to go ahead and push Western Call, just let me know. I'd love to have you back on to promote.
Absolutely, I'd love to talk more about it. That'd be great. This has been awesome. Thank you for having me.
No problem. We can talk about by then The Exorcist Part 2, Believer Part 2.
Yeah. Believe again.
Yeah, no, believe. Everyone, please check Nathaniel out. Next year, look out for What Hides Within. And Nathaniel, if you do not make a sequel or you do not make a full length in the next year or two, tell me what the ending is, what you plan in the end, so I won't have to wreck my brain. Okay?
All right. Absolutely. I will definitely tell you.
All right, everyone. Well, thank you for coming to the Horror Room. I'm Travis Bruce. I'll see you guys next time. Take care.
Thank you.